It's current year for another quick battle ladder replay today on the excavation site map. I am playing the Wood Elves and I am up against the Dwarves, and as you can see here with my army selection, I am going for something completely different than what some people may expect to be effective against the Dwarves. We'll get to my army in a second, but we'll check out the Dwarf army to start with. So we've got two organ guns up the front. Not a bad unit. They have some dual purpose. They're obviously similar to the Hellblaster in that they can sort of deal with infantry and single entities reasonably well. Fire a lot of projectiles, which is handy. So obviously a little bit less range than a cannon and that kind of stuff, but maybe a bit more of a dual purpose unit. So I don't mind that inclusion. We have some miners with blasting charges here out on the flanks, as well as a couple of units of dwarf warriors in the front. 2 units of iron breakers, which are going to be pretty tough for me to deal with in the second sort of line here, as well as the grumbling guard with their grumbling aura, which does give, I believe, a bit of a vigor buff, the old grumblers. 2 units of thunderers, as well as some Trollhammer torpedoes in the back, which is an interesting choice in this matchup, but might be good for shooting down wild riders and the like, or if I've taken a forest dragon. 2 units of slayers up the front. My opponent has just taken a regular Dwarf Lord here with basically no ability, so he's gone very cheap on his leadership. But Dwarf Lords are pretty tanky. Obviously, big melee defense, big armor, and just sort of frontline scrappers. They just hold the line and like most dwarves do. So like I said, my army is a little bit different. My front line consists of just Eternal Guard. I've also got the Winterheart Guard here for some Unbreakable with a Branch Wraith buffing the stats and Orion out the front here. But I have gone with a mass War Dancer line. Now, I've just gone the regular variant of War Dancer. The Azrai Spear variant obviously do have some... They do have some armor piercing with their Azrai Spears, but I figured the anti-infantry bonus may be a little bit better here and just the generally better combat stats. So I guess most people would think that these guys are pretty suboptimal in this matchup, but I think they actually do better than a lot of people think. 10 armor piercing damage is still okay, and given the fact that they have an armor piercing, a reasonably good amount of melee attack and a bonus versus infantry of 8, they're going to land a lot of attacks. So I wanted to just try out and see if they could be used in any way. I have obviously committed a lot of funds to them, so it's sort of an all or nothing build. But with their obviously great speed for foot infantry, they can get around the flanks. They'll beat miners, I think, pretty well. If they get into the rear, they'll do well. They will beat slayers very, very handily as well, which is obviously good considering my opponent has taken them. So yeah, 5 units of War Dancers. I also have 2 units of Wild Riders, Vanguard deployed and hidden in the forest. And obviously, as I said before, I've taken the Branch Wraith with Pendulum and Earthblood, as well as Orion, who has just taken the Shield Stone, the Cloak of Isha rather, as well as his 2 sort of bombardment abilities. I didn't take the Horn this game. I had to cut some costs, so he's just got the Cloak of Isha to work down or to give himself some damage resistance and some regen once he gets low. So obviously we see the organ guns singing in here from the start. I am going to put a Hunter's Talon gets down, and I time this quite nicely because the Thunderers actually walk into it as well. So I get some decent 2-for-1 damage there. But obviously these Iron Breakers advancing up, they're going to be pretty hard for me to deal with. I don't have a really good answer to them. Eternal Guard obviously have some armor piercing, but the blasting charges are just getting absolutely value for money there on them. This unit's going to pretty much die, soaking up a bunch of blasting charges. But as we said, miners and even dwarf warriors are going to be pretty good fodder for my War Dancers. So we see here 1 unit in the back here working around the flanks, trying to get in on the cannon crew, perhaps on the slayers as well. As we see these War Dancers are coming into the back line as well, and this will be a good engagement for me. Slayers don't really want to be fighting War Dancers, and we see these Eternal Guard here have just absolutely bounced off the Iron Breakers. They've hardly caused any damage whatsoever. I do get a nice 2-for-1 here with my Pendulum down on the Grumbling Guard and a unit of Iron Breakers, so some massive damage going down there, and a lot of kills on the Branch Wraith. There are only 13 kills, but a lot of unit damage. and Orion's going to be committing to combat here as well, just to shut down these Thunderers. So, as we said, a unit of miners with the blasting charges here, not putting up much resistance, and the Wild Riders have been brought into the fight as well, getting in on the cannon crew, pinning down the Iron Drakes before they can get really any shots off. And once again, I am beelining these Slayers. The Slayers are obviously going to be very capable of taking out my Wild Riders, so I want to get in on the Slayers with my War Dancers to try and chop them down. So I've got that mobile supremacy on the field, but. This flank's obviously gone very well. I've lapped around with these War Dancers in on the Thunderers, who have been pushed off. The Eternal Guard now are going to pin down the Organ Gun crew, and they're going to go down very quickly. And on this side, really, other than this unit of Ironbreakers, who are basically untouched, they're just going to hold the line here. Likewise, these Dwarf Warriors, they're going to hold for a decent amount of time against War Dancers. They will lose 1-to-1 eventually, but the speed of the War Dancers is allowing me just to get around the flanks here and get a really good envelopment. And now that Orion sees these Trollhammer Torpedo Iron Drakes, he's going to commit to combat, and his armor piercing and his just damage ability is going to really probably be too much for them. Not a lot of unit models as well, so he may be able to rout them off fairly quickly. Obviously, just bounce in between the routed infantry here with my Wild Riders, because I don't want to commit them here while there are Slayers. Let the War Dancers deal with them. Even Eternal Guard, that's not really what Slayers want to be fighting. They want to be fighting the Wild Riders, or even Orion as well, to make use of their anti-large. But this flank's starting to go a little bit better for me now. I've pushed this Organ Gun crew off their guns as well. And these Eternal Guard, even though they've really not put much of a dent on these Ironbreakers, these guys have racked up, over 80 kills now without too much damage in return. I am just holding them in place, and if I am able to get a rear charge in with these War Dancers, I may be able to work them off and just start to wear down their damage, because elsewhere the fighting's going reasonably well for me. I've overchased a little bit, or I think they might have actually routed these War Dancers, but the Wild Riders are making sure none of the range threats are coming back. The Grumbling Guard have shattered. There are some blasting charge miners coming in now, and even some Ironbreakers with some blasting charges. So getting some good efficient damage here on my Eternal Guard, but the Wild Riders getting a rear charge will break the Ironbreakers pretty quickly. Likewise, the miners probably won't stand up much longer. And I do have 45 War Dancers and 53 War Dancers over here, but it's slow going against these Ironbreakers, and at this point I think, it's not actually worth it. These guys are slow. Let's leave them out here. We can always just sort of bounce off. I'm hoping this Dwarf Warrior unit might be broken off relatively quickly, and seeing that these Eternal Guard are about to break, I do drop a Hawk's Talon here to try and just get some damage down on the blob. Obviously Ironbreakers here have shattered. The miners, they're not going to do too much to the Wild Riders, so I am pulling out just once again to get my charge bonus. The Dwarf Lord over here is probably not in a fight that he wants. There's a lot of unit models. There's Orion beating down on him, and the rallying War Dancers here are probably going to finish off these miners with blasting charges. But these Ironbreakers are certainly been a thorn in my side. They've probably got over 100 kills now. Yeah, 101 kills. But with the Dwarf Lord beaten down, and just with a lot of sort of semi-healthy units of infantry, the Slayers being unbreakable will fight to the death, but the Lord has been shattered, and the War Dancer Wood Elf build has managed to pull out a win against a fairly sturdy Dwarven build. Obviously those Ironbreakers have done really well. But Ironbreakers are quite expensive. I think I may have been tempted possibly to downgrade them for Longbeards if I'm in the Dwarf's favour. In this matchup, they're probably overkill. They're probably more than what you need. Longbeards are going to hold out just as long, basically, against any of this infantry. They also have charge defense against large, so the Wild Riders aren't going to be as threatening to them. But I was able to get into the back lines reasonably well and shut down the Thunderers very quickly. As I mentioned at the start, one of the great things about War Dancers is the fact that they're just absolute athletes. 46 movement speed on an infantry unit. basically means that they can get wherever they need to go. Obviously, they will suffer a bit at the hands of shooting units. Because they don't have a shield block chance and they've got no armor. They've got a bit of physical resistance, but Thunderers as well possibly could have just been Quarrelers. I think the mass crossbow fire would have been just as effective as Thunderer fire here. I didn't mind the pick of the organ guns, and obviously they've done a lot of damage to my Eternal Guard in the early games. I didn't really get, I guess, that much value out of them, but I think the list operated quite well as it was intended to. The Wild Riders got favourable engagements thanks to their speed. Orion is actually surprisingly tough for the dwarves to deal with because he has a lot of physical resistance and obviously in combat a lot of armor piercing. So he wasn't able to be picked off as easily, and obviously the Cloak of Isha, when he does get low, keeps him in the fight longer than you'd expect. Kind of surprised that Branch Wraith didn't get a lot more kills than that, because that was a nice pendulum that she dropped on the Grumbling Guard and one of those unit of Ironbreakers. So I think she's got her money's worth despite only having 17 kills to her name. But yeah, I queued up when I queued up this game. I queued up as Wood Elves. I was playing a few games as Wood Elves this night, and I don't know if my opponent counterpicked me or was just always going to pick Dwarves, but yeah, I just decided to, rather than re-pick, because obviously this is a matchup that is generally pretty unfavourable for the Wood Elves. It's very, very unfavourable for the Wood Elves. I decided to just try something, and I'm actually surprised how well the War Dancers performed. Obviously, they'll beat things like Dwarf Warriors and Miners very easily, despite them having good armor, just because their combat stats are so good against infantry. And then obviously Slayers 1-to-1 they deal with really, really well, obviously because Slayers have very low melee defense and are an infantry unit themselves. So yeah, bit of a different build that I threw out there. Not exactly what you'd call an anti-dwarf build, but on this occasion it's come up with the goods. So something to think about next time you queue up against dwarves with Wood Elves. But thanks for checking it out, and until next time, take care and we'll see you then.